Greetings. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome you to our 39th webinar in the Coffee with webinar series hosted by the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership at Seton Hall University. I'm Reggie Lewis, Executive Director of the Greenleaf Center, and it's great to greet all of you who've logged on today to take part in a very special conversation featuring voices of the next generation. Today, we've assembled some of America's best and brightest from the Seton Hall campus to assess a range of issues that currently impact affordability and the American dream. Each of our Seton Hall scholars will provide an analysis on different facets of this issue as they answer the question, is the American dream still within reach? But before a proper introduction of our esteemed campus leaders, I'd be remiss in not acknowledging the generous sponsor of the Greenleaf Center's 2026 Coffee with Webinar series, the Terrell Fund. The Terrell Fund is a foundation that serves children and families in New Jersey and Vermont. The fund works collaboratively across sectors to make an impact in such issue areas as early childhood, K-12 education, arts, family support, and more. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of our dear friends at the Terrell Fund. I'd now like to turn things over to Gabrielle Cooper, the Center's Senior Project Manager. Gabby?
Thank you, Reggie, and thank you all for being here today. It's my pleasure to now introduce today's discussants and the voices of the next generation. Sumaya Ramen is a senior graduating with a business degree of business management and is on the pre-law track. She is a former president of the Muslim Student Association, founding member of the Pre-Law Leadership Alliance at the PPAC, and is the outgoing 2025 through 2026 Student Body Secretary at Seton Hall University. Sumaya was also inducted into the Greenleaf Center's 2025 Hall of Fame as a youth exemplar. Sukaina Jaquette is a sophomore majoring in diplomacy and international relations with a minor in sociology. She is a member of the Pusino Leadership Institute and currently serves as the president of the Minority Pre-Law Society and the co-president of the Haitian Student Society. And last but not least, Sander Dawson is a junior double major in mathematical finance and philosophy. He is a member of the Pusino Leadership Institute, serves as the president of Seton Hall's Alpha Kappa Psi professional business fraternity, and is the founder of the Campus AI Club, as well as a Greenleaf Scholar. So thank you three for being here with us today. Before we begin, I want to give the audience a quick summary of how our conversation will flow. So each student is going to provide a brief overview on a topic that relates to affordability and achieving the American dream. Then the conversation will open up to our three discussants to talk about the topic further, and then we'll turn to audience questions on that specific topic. And then we'll start the process over. Our next student will present and we'll focus on that aspect of the issues here today. So is everyone ready here? Let's begin with Sumaya, who's here to present on job placement and livable wages.
Thank you for that introduction. First of all, I want to start off by saying thank you to the Greenleaf Center, obviously, for inviting me here today, Mr. Lewis, Ms. Cooper, especially you guys. I'm very honored to be here and for all the work that Greenleaf does. And the topic I chose was job placement and livable wage because it's something that I'm going through right now, especially as a graduating senior. When it comes to things about like myself, I'm very blunt, I'm very honest about it. And I'm happy to share my experiences today and a little bit of research that I've gathered from talking to other students as well. And I'm very open to connecting after this, taking advice as well. So obviously the American dream, right? We talk about if you graduate, you get a job, you work hard. But the real question with this is like, are you really guaranteed a stable life anymore? And for previous generations, a lot of that was the formula for the American dream. But today, a lot of people are still doing things right and they're struggling from it. And we measure our success by employment rates, but I truly believe that doesn't tell the full story because a lot of jobs today are low paying, right? They're lacking benefits or they're unstable. They're contract type work that, after a year or two of working, that's it for you. So you can still be employed today, and you cannot be economically secure. And I think that's the big problem here. And also we see with a lot of like jobs in the business field as well, they require a lot of like degrees or certifications, which also makes a lot of barriers and debt. So we've all heard of the American dream, right? And that consists of buying a house, supporting a family, building your wealth, and just having this sort of overall financial stability. But today we're faced with the fact that a lot of entry-level jobs don't even match our degree expectations, right? Our wage growth hasn't kept pace with the cost of living, which is only going up, and graduates are underemployed. So they're working jobs that don't even require their degrees. They're working jobs and getting recruited for jobs that they're not even interested in, but it's because of the fact that they have no choice but to work there. And a lot of Americans today do say that it's harder to achieve financial security than it was for previous generations. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median weekly earnings for full-time in 2025 was 1,145 a week, which is less than 60K a year, which a lot of people will say is not a livable salary. And the Economic Policy Institute says that it's 45 to 70K a year, and that's not enough to support a family. It's not enough to live in, especially like US metro areas. So I kind of want to like tie this into a personal story because as I said, like I'm very, like open about myself and everything. So obviously I'm graduating in like 17 days, and I'm currently, looking for a job. And it's been incredibly difficult. And a lot of people will come up and be like, oh, like what are your plans after graduation? Like what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm still looking for a job. Right. And I think the issue at hand, what I've heard from a lot of people is that the market is really saturated, but it's not that applicants like me aren't good enough, but there's just so many applications to get through that they don't even bother looking through it. And I think we also see AI come into this as well. A lot of the times when I'm submitting like job applications, I'll go through and there'll be like a little checkbox where I can select to opt out of AI reviewing my resume. Because if you let that happen, it's just going to filter you out if you don't match the exact title of what they're looking for. And me graduating with a business degree, I'm looking for paralegaling jobs, legal assistant jobs. So I'm constantly, to be honest, like just being turned away. And I know that I'm going to end up finding something like eventually. But for people who are losing hope, and I'm somebody who also went through that as well, what I've heard is that it takes one job to get back to you. You'll know that you'll end up somewhere, so I'm not ready to give up yet on that, and I hope that no one else who's also, struggling to define the American dream and, find a livable salary and support yourself isn't either. And when I went and I asked people if the American dream is still within reach, someone responded they had a family with one parent working, and they said for them, the American dream is not achievable. And I asked them, I was like, all right, well, then what do you think defines the American dream? And they said the American dream is not, it's to be able to not worry about money and for one person in your family to work and be able to support. And because of the way that we see salaries going down and the cost of home ownership going up, there's delays in milestones like home ownership, marriage, and family. A lot of people who want to get married don't even do so until they can actually provide, right? And your savings, your retirement, right? The later you work, the longer you'll have to wait until you have enough saved for retirement. Today, the median home buyer age is 36, and that's the highest that's ever recorded. So yes, Americans do eventually become part of the American dream, but it's very uncertain and it's a lot less accessible right now. And the challenges within this is that college enrollment is increasing, right? And we see this at Seton Hall too. So I was executive secretary for the student body, and we would meet with administration and we talk about the incoming freshman class. We were told that the class of 2029 was the largest class that Seton Hall has seen yet. And I'm a commuter, so I've seen that in the parking lots too. I can never find any parking, right? So it obviously makes the job markets a lot more competitive as well, to the point where our own degrees don't even guarantee our employment anymore. And a lot of employment today is based on your connections rather than your experience. And I think that's something that really doesn't get a strong enough emphasis, that the more connections you have, the better, because a lot of the times, right, like I said before, people are working jobs in which they may not feel like they're qualified to do so, but they got it based off connection. And for underemployment and job quality, a lot of people have jobs, but they don't necessarily enjoy it. And there's a difference between having a job and having a career, right? A job is just like you want that filler. You just want to make that money, get out of there after your 9 to 5. Whereas a career is something like, for me, for example, I want to go into paralegaling because I see myself going into law school. It's a career for me. It's something that I'm passionate about, something I want to see myself do long term. But obviously, we have all these problems, right? And I'm sure that there are many, many solutions that could take place. So, for students who are listening, how can we strengthen our job pathways? Get involved on campus, like especially for Seton Hall students, like you have so many resources, I feel, getting involved on campus with like pre-professional advising centers. Like we look at Sakina. Sakina runs Minority Pre-Law Student Association. Like, getting involved in those opportunities that help, minorities and help people who look like us and who have the same backgrounds as us kind of succeed in that way. And postgraduate, one thing that I've been working on since I was a junior, because I know that I was gonna go into working, is just networking. Like it might be scary at first. It might be scary going up to a person and starting to talk to them, but just network. People love networking. It's literally the key to your success is networking. On LinkedIn, connect with people. If you meet with somebody or you're meeting with somebody next week, even if it's like for the briefest interaction, connect with them on LinkedIn. Get in contact with them. Use them. Don't use them, but kind of use them as a resource in order to, help yourself get a job, help yourself sort of get your name out there. Um, and then obviously there are things that can be done from the United States side as well. So I actually took this class this semester. It's called United States Politics. And there's a book that we were assigned to read. It's called Abundance by Ezra Klein. It's a really good book. It's a lot about affordable housing initiatives and how scarcity wasn't something that we caused, but it was manufactured by the US, right? But I truly think that the American dream hasn't disappeared, but it is evolving into something that's a lot harder to reach, and opportunities are becoming more unequal depending on where you start. But yeah, I really do think that some cool discussion points of this would be, whether college is truly a main path anymore to reach success. Like you can make connections without going to college. You can go to college and make connections as well. And I think those would also be some really interesting points to talk about. And also to everybody, like, what matters more to you? Is it higher wages or lower cost of living? And I think there's a lot of sort of things that tie into this topic. And it's a very broad topic. I could go on about it for days. But that's all I have to share today. That's sort of my findings from talking to different students, researching a little bit about it. And yeah, thank you for listening.
Well, thank you so much. So now let's open to Sonder and Sukaina for the three of you to have a conversation on job placements and livable wages.
Yeah, I can go first. So, man, I love what you said about how important it is to network now. I think a big emphasis in the job market right now is that if you don't know somebody, you're not even going to be considered for the opportunity because it's so saturated. And I love what you said about how the American dream isn't disappearing, but it's just becoming further out of reach. I couldn't agree with that more, honestly. When I was doing some research before this webinar, and I was asking people, in our generation, like how they would view this situation. They kind of felt the exact same way that you're kind of describing, where it's just becoming further away. And it's hopefully one day it'll be, a little bit more attainable. But as of right now, it's still, distant. And I loved what you said about how, we really have to emphasize the importance of utilizing campus resources. I think at Seton Hall we give a great support system and programs for us to grow and achieve the American dream through that way. But just some of those stats are just absolutely appalling regarding the wage difference in comparison to the housing costs. It's really, surprising to me to hear that, like in the boomer generation, they had the ability to buy a house on a single family income, and now everyone like now you need two incomes and you still won't even be able to afford a house in most situations. Um, what do you think is the biggest thing that we could do as maybe policy advocates? I know you just went to Washington and had some advocacy yourself this past week. Is there any specific advocacy that we could do as younger people to kind of shift this in the right direction?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people don't realize that obviously it's a little difficult. Like you brought up the fact that I went to DC. Actually, one of the things that we did was, kind of advocate for people who are in unfortunate situations like that. And I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that it's really not that difficult to reach out to congresswomen, congressmen, like your representatives. Like it's something that, it's just about getting an email and reaching out to them. If you go to the Capitol, like you can knock on the door of like a representative and talk to them about what you want to talk about. And I think a lot of people think that it's very complicated getting through them, but it's all about making the action, and in terms of action as well, kind of tying back to what you were saying about student resources as well on campus. I know that one thing that Seton Hall is doing next year is that they're moving the Career Center to a more visible location. Because obviously Bailey Hall comes across as a very kind of, in the back of campus by Corrigan sort of location, and they're thinking of moving it to Jubilee, which is obviously like a hub on campus, and I think students taking advantage of areas like the Career Center, taking advantage of even the PPAC. The PPAC has policy like initiatives that they run throughout the year. Like I know, and maybe Sakina can talk about this a little bit more. They had a healthcare and law sort of collaboration when it came to different like healthcare aspects, like policy advocating for that. So just getting involved on campus also kind of contributes to that. You get involved with pre-professional organizations on campus. They can also sort of take you in a way. The PPAC took us to Washington, D.C. back in March as well. It's all about involvement. It's all about connections.
All right. Sukaina, were you going to chime in?
Yes, I'll
Okay.
go next. Thank you so much, Samaya, for your insight. I feel like I learned a lot from everything you had to say. Yes, I think one of the biggest thing that student can do is definitely get heavily involved on campus, especially with the pre-professional advising center. They're really amazing. What Samaya was saying earlier, we had a pre-professional and pre-law collaboration where we went to District 11, which was the old congressional district of Mikey Sherrill, which is the governor of New Jersey, and we were able to advocate for better health care there, which was an amazing experience. As well as PPAC has plenty opportunity where they do law and lunch with lawyers, different type of lawyers. As well as I think being an advocate for others can truly be a great thing that you could do as well. And I totally agree with what Samaya was saying earlier about networking, which I think is an amazing tool for students to use as well. And I know a lot of my fellow Gen Zs are struggling with finding internship, which is such a big thing right now. I feel like every time I talk to my friends, they're like, I can't find an internship. I looked everywhere. So I think networking is truly a tool they can utilize. Um, and my question, I would say for Samaya is, I know many Gen Z students, they think they're doing everything right, right degrees, right internship, yet they still struggle to find, stable job. What would you say is the disconnect between preparation and opportunity?
That's a great question. The disconnect between preparation and opportunity. Ooh, I know I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, but it's just about the fact that like when it comes to preparing for getting an internship, preparing for getting a job, like so kind of when I look at you, Sandra, when I look at you too, like you guys are both very personable people. You guys can go up to somebody and start a conversation. You guys know how to network. And those are things that I think contribute so highly to both of your successes because you guys are both very successful people. And I guess like your question I'd like you to like think about yourself too, like like you're an incredible human. Like you have the opportunity, both of you, to go up to a person, start a conversation, connect. It's about being personable. When you're able to be personable, you're able to connect with somebody, talk to them, even if it doesn't mean that you use them to kind of help get it into like an internship or a job or whatever. Just that ability to connect, that message passes on where someone will be like, oh, I was talking to Sonder the other day. He's a really good person to talk to. I was talking to Sakina the other day. She's a really good person to talk to. And when you do that, people will come to you. They'll come up to you. They'll talk to you. They'll build that connection with you. And from there, I guess it's just only sort of like a pathway that's paved for you to just continue to go up and continue to talk to people and have that ability to have your way into making a successful future for yourself.
Wonderful. Okay, so our one follow-up question that we have as we close out the job placement and livable wage category is what would make pe like young individuals in your generation optimistic about your professional futures? Is there maybe a change that's made even at a Seton Hall or the state level or your county level? What's like maybe one or two things that would help maybe flick a switch and be like, okay, there is hope out here for like being able to find a job or be placed somewhere that provides a livable wage and a community for you?
It's a good question. It's it's all about, can you repeat the last part of the question again?
Yeah, so like what's one or two things that could change within society or on campus that would help to make things a little more optimistic for people that are graduating right now and looking for jobs?
Yeah, so in terms of like suggestions for what can be done in making students more optimistic about their careers, about their jobs they want to go into, the example I brought about the Career Center earlier, obviously they are a very helpful resource on campus, but a lot of students will say that the Career Center focuses a lot on students in the business field. And moving it to a central location like Jubilee Hall might sort of allow that solution come to fruition where it's like, okay, now they'll be able to have a bigger space. They'll be able to provide more to students, maybe connect with the PPAC as well, and provide like pre-health, pre-law opportunities for students as well. And then also just sort of student government and student activity boards and just the Office of Student Engagement in general at school, I think needs to push the like sort of focus on clubs a little bit more. Because so many different categories of organizations on campus. We have social, cultural, religious, like we have everything on campus. We have
Mhm.
over 150 organizations on this campus, and I just don't think that these organizations get enough credit. Um, like for example, going back to MPLS, I'm gonna use them as an example again. It's because they're just that good. Like when I was on MPLS board, we kind of had like a little bit of like a rougher sort of like leadership. This is before Sakina became president. We had a little bit of like a rougher sort of leadership in like to the point where there was no really impact being made on minorities on campus, minority students who want to pursue things in the legal field. And Sakina, when she became president, and I stepped down because when I was SJ secretary, I couldn't be on any other e-boards. But when Sakina came into that position of president, she went from being freshman rep to president and really, as a minority, brought those opportunities. She made MPLS visible on campus. So a lot of club leaders sort of need to get their organizations out there a little bit more. And I think that also takes not being shy, like break out of your shell, like go upstairs in the UC to the Office of Student Engagement, make conversations with them, build relationships with them, kind of plug your club a little bit. And that'll help so much to kind of, get yourself out there. So kudos to MPLS for everything they've done this year for like minority students. They've made a really big impact. And I hope that the Career Center can also sort of make that impact in terms of passion about like jobs and careers next year.
May I add something to
Wonderful.
that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Samaya, I loved your answer. Specifically within that like kind of micro environment within Seton Hall. I just wanted to kind of touch on like a broader kind of answer, in terms of, what our generation could look forward to. And my answer would be kind of like the great wealth transfer. I've been talking about, like boomers and kind of their buying power, back in the 70s and the 60s. But I think one thing that our generation is really looking forward to is that transfer of wealth. Injecting that liquidity and that money into the lower generations as boomers continue to retire. And you see some of these older generations passing on, say, their businesses or other kinds of, capital that they have access to. It kind of leaves me at least optimistic in terms of an opportunity, in terms of like what it means to me to achieve the American dream and be able to own a house. And then the other one that I would kind of go for is like the decentralization, of like of work, I guess. You see a lot of these, financial hubs, say New York City, companies are moving out of them, and it's not as hard anymore to work in a big company or to have access to these high-paying careers. You don't have to live in this city, and have to live in this specific area anymore. It's really, there's virtual work, there's competitive salaries, in spots where they didn't exist prior, and I think that trend is growing. And I think as a young person, it's exciting to me that I don't have to be geographically, almost like siloed to like have that opportunity. I'm able to, hopefully, as the job market improves, to be able to hopefully achieve the American dream in other parts of the country, of the world, other than just the financial hubs, other than just the main areas. So those were kind of just the two like macro kind of lenses that I want to look at. But to me, I loved your answer with the micro and looking at Seton Hall specifically.
Yeah, and I think kind of adding on to your point as well, like the part that you said at the end kind of resonated with me a little bit. I think the American dream, yeah, it could be financially, it could be owning a house, but essentially the American dream is how you define it, and that doesn't always have to be in a very like financial aspect. Your American dream, my American dream can be different than Saunders' American dream, and his American dream can be different from Sukaina and Mr. Lewis and Ms. Cooper. Like it could be all of our American dream versions can be different. I think we live in a society today in which a lot of the mindset is that we can't make it if we don't have money. And that's why the American dream is something that is changing so rapidly because when the cost of living gets higher, there's not much you can do for yourself. You need the money. You need money to live. You need money to live not even a rich, luxurious life, but just a comfortable life. And essentially, for me personally, like I never thought of the American dream. I understand from like a standard point of view, it's owning a house, it's having a family, being married. But for me, the American dream is more so whether I feel like I made it in life. And that doesn't have to be in a way where I'm living in a mansion or I have the nicest cars. So I think it's cool that the three of us kind of are all on like sort of different paths and all even like our mindsets may differ in some ways. I think that we all bring like very broad and very unique experiences to the aspect of the American dream as well. But for no person is it the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
totally, sorry, I
No.
add a few words. Yes, I totally agree to that, Samaya, and thank you so much for your kind words toward me as well as toward MPLS. I'm so glad we're making such a big impact on campus. But touching up to what your last point, like my family immigrated from Haiti, and I know like my mom's American dream was just to make it here and make sure I go to school and I achieve my dream, and that was her American dream. And I know that's different from a lot of people. And I know some of my friends' American dream were just to be happy with their family, just to have a place and a bed to stay. So I totally agree with that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
All such wonderful points here. So, in keeping with time, we're going to go to the next topic of student debt. So, Sukaina, you're up.
Hi everyone again. My name is Sukaina Jake, and thank you so much for the Greenleaf Center to invite me here today to speak on the panel. And I'm so grateful to be alongside great student leaders and to give our opinion or insight as well. So time to jump in. So when we talk about the American dream, or from my perspective when I was immigrating to the US, I think we usually think about stability, opportunity, and moving up in life. But for my generation, I think that dream is being weighted down by the student debt, which is 1.84 trillion worth. And just to put that in perspective, that is bigger than entire countries' GDPs like Australia and Spain. So we're not just graduating with degrees, we're starting our life already owing something that feels like a second mortgage. And for me, that isn't just economic issues. It's also personal because I've seen my classmate, my roommates, my friend, they all talks about the same thing. And some of my friends even dropped out of college because this debt is just too much for them. And I've seen how education can really determine someone's future or limit it. Right now, the average borrower leaves school with around $40,000 in debt. And at the same time, entry level jobs, as Samaya also speak on that earlier, entry level jobs aren't really keeping up with the cost of living. So paying off loans isn't just about responsibility. It's often competing with basic needs that people needs. And so the real question becomes, is this about personal responsibility or is it something bigger? And on one hand, people do make choices, such as what school they go to, what they choose to study, how much they borrow, and that matters. But at the same time, we can't ignore the bigger picture. About 65% of jobs today require some sort of higher education. And so if a degree is basically the entry ticket to a stable life, and that ticket come with that, then it stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like a requirement. And And at that point, that death is seeing an impact beyond just individual people. And for every $1,000 increase in student debt, home ownership dropped by 2%. And people are delaying buying home, like Samaya had stated earlier, starting businesses, and even going to not starting families as well. And so where do we go from here? And I think one important steps is about transparency. And people should know what they're signing up for, not just how much they're borrowing, but what repayment will actually look like based on a realistic outcomes. And because at the end of the day, this isn't just about that. It's also about opportunity. And right now, most people don't know that the rules are changing as well. Starting in July 1st, 2026, I know the end of Grad Plus will be eliminating for new borrowers as well. And this massive shift will also cause like force toward grad student to go toward private loans as well. And that is a really strict cap, which is $20,000. So, um, also going off personal stories as well. I know I don't want to be in great debt when I graduate because I want to go to law school, and having $250,000 in debt will just not be something I would be looking forward to. And I know when I talk to my peers as well, I just seeing people on the internet talked about like how they have debt their entire life. They're going to go, how they're going to live their entire life with that, basically. And when I thought about the American dream, and that is just not what I pictured. So I think the American dream can still be achievable, but I think just for certain people, and not all people will be able to make it. And I think we should also invest in our youth futures as well. And I think if students or young adults feel like they're going to be in debt their entire life, then they won't want to pursue a certain degree. They won't want to pursue higher education, and that can lead to slower economy growth, as well as also a problem for our older generation because young people won't invest in social security as well, which will cause a problem for retirement as well. And yes, that's my thank you for everyone. That's all. There's any question, please let me know. Gabriella, I think you're on mute.
I'm muted, sorry. Sandra or Sumaya, you guys want to jump in? Any responses to that?
Yeah, 100%. I absolutely love what you said about, the student debt. It's a tremendous epidemic, right? And I think it's the only debt that will follow you through if you declare bankruptcy. You'll still have it. And it's honestly scary because there are some people that never fully recover. And going back to Sumaya's point earlier of, you're getting this degree in undergraduate and you're not even working a job that requires an undergraduate degree. And for that reason, you're not necessarily being given the compensation to cover for your student debt because you don't necessarily need a degree for that role. And I think the best thing that we can do more moving forward as college students, as young citizens of the world, I would say would be to advocate as much as you can for people to use their resources, right? Try to use FAFSA as much as possible, apply for scholarships. Um, you know, I think a big part of it is advocacy for some of these scholarships. The Greenleaf Center is a perfect resource to apply for some of those scholarships and for some of those resources and guidance. And I think it's really important to democratize that access to that information, especially when it comes to, hey, maybe it's better for me to take 2 years out of community college and then transfer to a 4 year. Some of that information isn't readily available because there's this prestige aspect of it. People say, "Oh, I don't want to go to community college because they think that like I'm better than that, right?" And I think if we could break down that stigma and then also democratize the information of how can we best help people be financially literate within that scenario, then people could hopefully reduce their student debt throughout their lifetime and as more generations come through.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Sandra is saying, and I think I can't stress the importance of also taking full advantage, like Sandra said, about opportunities to help yourself financially. Like FAFSA, doing it on time is crucial. Like I know what it's like to not do FAFSA on time. So to everybody listening, do your FAFSA on time. Like it is very, very crucial to do that. And I think that for a lot of people, like Sandra said, like the reason that they don't want to go to community college is because there's this huge stigma behind it. But truly, like there are so many people I know who go to community college, get their associates, and they end up getting their bachelor's or their master's or whatever. And like it's like having an extra degree. Like I think of community college as like a pathway for you to save a lot of money, number one, and number two, to also kind of like you end up smarter than a lot of people because you have a little bit of that experience. Like there's no harm in going to community college. And like I kind of want to ask, how do you think that Seton Hall University, it's a private school, so it's no private schools are known for not being cheap. How do you think a school like Seton Hall University, that's a private school, can sort of promote like pathways for students who come from community college or students who come from lower income backgrounds to deal with, I believe it's like a 56K loan cap now. How can they provide pathways to sort of help students from lower income backgrounds prepare for the debt that's going to be ahead of them from attending a private school?
I love this question. I can go first then. So kind of if you want to like mention anything after, if I miss anything, I would say the best thing that they could do is definitely promote the opportunity of, hey, like this is what it means to be financially literate and having those academies, those programs, those opportunities for you to do something like that. I know that there are some programs that currently exist. There's the Financial Literacy Academy, that Dean Shield and Stillman is kind of heading up, where there's a direct partnership with Essex Community College, and they directly mentor people in those areas, and in like say business majors that are planning to make the jump to a 4 year, and going to those schools and giving them education and breaking down those barriers of what it means to be financially literate, with student debt, with with your income, right? Like if you're a part-time worker, like how can you maximize the money that you want to take home and the money that you want to invest, and what does it mean to have an emergency fund? I think those kind of academy initiatives that for example, Dean Shield is leading, is very critical when it comes to democratizing that and allowing everyone to really have their fair share of that information, because it should be open to everyone, and everyone should have that access to information, right? It's on the internet, but there's a billion things on the internet, right? Like we need to be able to streamline that and direct it to the people that need to hear it most.
I totally agree with that, Cinder. And I feel like as a first generation student as well, I kind of missed out on a lot of these opportunities because I didn't know how to maximize. I didn't know where to look up. And I think when I came to Seton Hall University, I didn't even know I could appeal my scholarship. So I was able to learn that from some friends and I was able to do that as well. But having a single mother as well, it was a struggle, definitely. But I think Seton Hall does have first generation programs as well for first gen students as well. And there's also private scholarship that offered. And I think one way Seton Hall can definitely like help their students is to send out emails as well about these scholarship opportunities, and as well have sessions for like first generation student as well to inform them of these opportunities that they do have. And I think also having panels like this where we get to talk to students as well and letting them know that these opportunities exist and where they are and how to apply for them. And I think those are great starts.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm gonna kind of answer my own question a little bit here too. But I think it sort of starts in high school. I think helping make college, I mean, I'm gonna say it flat out, college is not affordable. Regardless of where you go, college is not affordable. It's not ever, there's no tuition that is reasonable. Unless you go to like a community college, obviously. But I think it starts in high school, like if you know you're good at literature, you know you're good at English, take AP Lit, take AP Lang. You know you're good at math, like take AP Stats, take AP Calc, things like that. Having those college credits and kind of supplementing yourself so that when you start undergrad, you have the opportunity of potentially graduating early. That saves you a year on tuition. And on top of that, there was one other point I was gonna make. Oh yeah, so I think a lot of people don't realize this, but the tuition you pay is for 18 credits. So if you ever have a semester where you're taking 15 credits or 12 credits, always take 18 credits. You can supplement your schedule with very simple, like easy classes. Like, for example, I know Seton Hall offers yoga. Like, that's so cool, like take a yoga class. It's very simple. Do that because I think debt is one thing, but also making use of the money you're paying is another thing. So why are you going to let that money to go to waste? You're paying for 18 credits, take 18 credits, even if it means it's very simple classes. And I think a lot of high schools and colleges have dual credit programs where as a senior, you have the option of as a senior in high school, you have the option of taking a couple classes at like I know my high school, Parsippany High School, had a dual degree program with Fairleigh Dickinson. So you could take some classes at FDU, but also sort of obtain some college credits. Like I think you would get at least like 30 college credits, and you would also finish up your high school degree. And so kind of you mentioned earlier, like the appeal letter, that is something that not enough students take advantage of. Anytime a student comes to Seton Hall, it's a private school, so I'm going to be very blunt, private schools have money. And as a student, you have every right to take opportunity. You have every right to take that opportunity. I don't want to say advantage, but take that opportunity and put it to use. Like an appeal letter consists of writing a situation in which why you need more money and you send it. And I did it too for undergrad. And you can get anywhere between 1,500 to like 4,000 more dollars. And that might not seem a lot on top of like 50K tuition, but it's something, it's going to put you in less debt. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think depending on your background, like you're gonna be in debt sort of like regardless of where you go, but it's always good to because I mean the American dream is not affordable, right? But at the end of the day, it is good to always take advantage of that.
I totally agree, Samaya, because I was able to take advantage of my school dual enrollment back in my senior year, and now I'm able to graduate Seton Hall a year early because of it. So I'm just very grateful. So if any high school student are watching this, please get involved. Please take those AP classes. Please do the dual enrollment because it will save you a lot of money in college. And quite frankly, when I see there's some videos I see online because when I was doing my research, and there was this one lady, she was like, "Yes, like when even when I die, I will still be in debt," and I'm like, that is just insane.
All right. So, one follow-up question is, I know that each of you are very passionate in the fields that you're pursuing, but would you say from experience of talking with others and interacting with others on campus, have financial pressures changed the way students choose their majors, internships, and other career paths?
I can be the
Um,
first person. Oh, sorry.
Well, let's do
Go
Fernanda
ahead.
because this is her category, and then
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we'll have you go in.
Sorry. Yes, I would say for sure because I even some of my close friend I seen experience this. They went from a nursing major to a social service, some type of major because it's just too expensive. As well as some people that were trying to pursue law, but when they heard about how much law school costs, they were like, maybe I should try to be a paralegal or maybe I should just try to be a law assistant. So I definitely seen people struggle with that and experience it. But I myself, if I wasn't such a strong advocate and just love this path for me, I just can't see myself in any other career. But I definitely would have considered it as well, since this is like really just such a big financial burden to take on. So,
Yeah.
I love what you just said about the financial burden. I 100% agree. What I was going to say is a lot of people I've seen making that switch into the business school. A lot of people have been shifting. I know a few people like I'm in the business school myself, and I know a few of my friends that were studying like social work and some of the traditionally lower paying careers out of college, making that transition because they feel that pressure of, oh my God, am I going to be able to, one, like support a family, one, two, buy a house, three, be able to live on my student debt? And I think, some of these, people that I've met with that made that transition, a big part of it was the income that they were going to make out of college, right? You can't really, it's almost impossible to live now on just a teacher salary, when you're trying to support a family. And that's really unfortunate. And I think we really have to reevaluate as a society where our priorities lie in terms of, where we want our money to go. But in terms of, that transition, I totally think that there's an element of I can't afford, what I want to do in life based on based on this role or career.
Yeah, and sort of adding on to that, one of the like first questions that people tend to ask when they want to add a minor or have a double major or even a triple major is, do I have to pay more for it? And that's something that's of concern. And then also, when I started at Seton Hall University, I was a 3+3 applicant. So I was in the business and law program. And the main reason I dropped that program truly is because I was never told that the fourth year of your undergrad, which is your first year of law school, you are going into law school with 90 credits, which, according to the state, is not fulfilling an undergraduate degree. So, therefore, your first year of law school as a 3+3 applicant is completely out of pocket. You don't get any scholarships, you don't get any financial aid. And that's essentially being over $70,000 in debt in your first year of law school. And that's something that was never communicated to me. And at the time, we didn't have a pre-law advisor. Now we have Madeline. She's incredible. But at the time, that was like the main reason I dropped the program was because it was just so unaffordable. And I think that a lot of the solutions lie in communication. Especially with the school that has a law school and has a medical school attached to it by name, like having that sort of communication and communicating properly, like, all right, this is how much you're going to be paying, this is how much tuition costs, all that is very, very important. I can't stress that enough.
Definitely.
Totally agree.
All all great things. So in the interest of time, we have to move to our last category on housing affordability with Sonder.
Yeah, I know we're kind of tight on time, so I'll just kind of go over two big things that I really want to talk about.
Mhm.
One is the missing middle. Throughout my research, I was able to kind of glean that there's been a shift between single family homes, large apartment complex, and that dynamic switch to more of like like duplexes, townhomes, courtyard apartments, right? These opportunities for people like us in the younger generation to afford housing for a long time, it was kind of illegal, so to speak, to build these specific apartments or duplexes because of strict zoning laws. But in the past 10 years or so, there's been a large advocacy for, that middle ground, right? It's either 500 square foot apartment or 3,000 square foot mansion, right? And they realize that the American dream, so to speak, is dying because people can't find housing. And so different states like California, I think it was Oregon, Minnesota, they've been passing these laws to kind of end the single family home zoning to allow for either low income housing or high density housing, and that allows people to um, really have the opportunity to live somewhere, which is so crazy to say that we had to like go through that much effort for that to happen. But I saw a stat. It was that, construction for these like missing middle units has hit its highest volume since 2007. And I think that's a testament to one, like how well or how poorly people are doing financially in terms of the ability to buy and own a house. And then two, that kind of shift, which gives me optimism. The fact that that shift is happening, however slow that it is happening. But that kind of gives me a little bit of optimism. And then the other thing that I kind of wanted to touch on was the Housing for the 21st Century Act. It's also called the Road to Housing Act. It's kind of it's a Senate it passed the Senate in I think March of this year by a landslide, and it kind of focuses on three levers. The first one, I think, was the anti-investor clause. So essentially meaning that the institutional investors that own more than, say, 300 units of something can't necessarily invest in something like a single family home. I know there's been a lot of tension in the news regarding, say, BlackRock, right, owning single family homes and not really making them affordable because they're only interested in money. And I think as someone that's going to be going into finance, working in this city, like I have to be aware of that. And I think that step is definitely in the right direction. They're also talking about in that same act is cutting the red tape, streamlining some of the more rigorous reviews of what it means to have the zone of housing, right? Removing those barriers, right? And then the third one was pre-approved pattern books. Just glancing at my notes, it's more of providing grants for cities to create those pre-approved home designs. So I know back home in Irvine, California, we're working on developing, we as in the city that I live in, is working on developing more of those homes that are so to speak, cookie cutter because it's cheap and affordable for us to just kind of make a lot of them. And that way, in a high density area like Orange County, you're able to fit a lot more people and hopefully drive that rent down because there's higher density. And I think like those two things give me a lot of optimism as a young person. And then there's obviously like some of the other stats that we've talked about throughout today of housing prices not keeping track with wages and things like that. But those are just kind of the two things I kind of wanted to outline.
All right. Anyone want to jump in on housing?
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you so much for sharing that. I was gonna ask, do you think like renting long term is gonna become the new norm for our generation?
Yeah, that's a good question. It honestly looks like that. I don't know a single person that I've talked to that says that they're planning on buying. It's pretty much impossible to put down a down payment unless you're incredibly fortunate or you win the lottery. It seems impossible at this point. I hope that it doesn't turn to that. I would love for to see less institutional investors owning homes and more, individual Americans, having that opportunity. And I think right now, my answer is yes. Long-term rental is probably what we're going towards, but I think with an act, like the 21st Century Housing Act, we have the opportunity to kind of shift in the right direction. And I hope that we do get there in time. But I'm honestly, not sure, just given the current economic state and how much, like I said, the low income across all jobs, entry level.
Yeah, those are all really good points, Sonder. Right now, a lot of what I see is that people who move from apartments usually end up moving to areas like Texas or areas in New Jersey like Mount Olive, where housing is significantly cheaper, or even areas in South Jersey. South Jersey also, the cost of living in South Jersey is cheaper than it is in North Jersey. So I kind of wanted to ask, like obviously one of the concerns with building houses, even if it's apartments, because sometimes apartments can be purchased as well. So when it comes to that, how do you think that um, zoning laws sort of, or just zoning issues in general affect the housing scarcity and just the ability for people to have a place to live?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love the question. I think the biggest thing that in terms of the zoning is that it just prevents um, certain developers or builders to build, say, high density housing or low income housing because there are certain, say, communities. I know you kind of mentioned like how people are moving to Texas or places like Mount Olive. I think that in a place like South Orange, there is almost a stigma to building high density housing because some people view it as like, oh, like not in my backyard, right? Like I don't want to have to see these like big buildings where like all these people live. Like I don't want to feel like I'm in a metropolis, right? And I think like that that is valid, right? That they feel that way and that they live there and that that's their opinion. But I think that there's a certain level of grace that we should keep giving people in terms of that kind of zoning environment when we need to say, hey, maybe like there's a lot of homeless people in Newark. We could do a lot by building more of the high density housing right on the other side of South Orange Avenue. And that selflessness or willingness to give that up is what we as a society could collectively do to help say the homeless crisis and the low income crisis that we've been talking about.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I feel like housing is it's a basic supply and demand equation, It's like areas like New York are more expensive because more people want to live there, but there's not enough houses. Whereas areas like Texas, less people live there, so there's more room to people live, so that's why people end up moving down there. And I could honestly, like Dallas, Austin, those sort of areas are cheaper to live, and they're known for people actually moving down there to live a more affordable life, with like luxurious houses that are half the cost of luxurious houses over here. And I could definitely see people continuing to do that, but I could also see Texas eventually becoming a place where the cost of housing isn't as affordable anymore either. So I think housing is a very, very interesting topic, but it's essentially just a supply and demand sort of thing.
All right. Is that all? Well, thank you guys so much for being here with us today. Everything that you guys contributed was really powerful. We're grateful that you guys were able to join us.
I had to fight from wanting to jump in with questions and comments to of praise. Gabby and I are smart in only one way today. We were smart in that we selected Sumaya, Sukaina, and Sonder
Mm.
to have this incredibly fascinating, just a fascinating conversation on some pretty complex challenges facing, your generation. And we're all the better for not just your analysis, your policy recommendations, but really the inspiration and hope that you've given us today. So Samaya framed it for us in the beginning as saying that the American dream has not disappeared or is not disappearing, but it's just a little more challenging to reach. So we're hopeful that with some of the solutions and the recommendations made today, that we can get a little closer to realizing the American dream for everyone. So again, on behalf of the Greenleaf Center, thank you all for making today possible.
And
Thank you
bef-
so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. It was an honor.
Thank you guys. And before we go, I have a few brief announcements for the center. So, May registration for Foundations of Servant Leadership is open. The course starts next Tuesday. This course examines the efficacy of a leadership approach that fosters growth in others, builds strong, vibrant teams, and leaves organizations and communities better than the way they were found. Registration information can be found on the homepage of greenleaf.org. If you would like to stay connected with the center to learn more about our next webinars coming up, you can follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And lastly, for those who logged on, if you could take a brief moment to complete the Zoom survey that would pop up, we would really appreciate it. So that is all I have. Thank you guys again for joining us today and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
Happy
again.
much. Have an
Friday.
amazing weekend. Bye, everyone.